Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Any Given Monday. We are live today. It is February, Black History Month. We're excited to have our guest today. And if you're interested in sponsoring an episode, please reach out, email us at info@n18. Our guest today is Obinna, aka Obi. We're going to bring him to the stage. Hi, Obinna. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How are you, LJ?
I'm good. I'm good. You were triggering my anxiety for a second.
Oh no, I got your note and so super excited to join you today.
Awesome, awesome. And so, give everyone a little bit of a background about yourself and how you got into the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So my name is Obinna Onungwa, CEO and founder of Powered by Q, full service branding agency here in Brooklyn, New York. And I actually started my career in finance. Funny enough, I thought I wanted to be a trader on Wall Street and learned quickly that this is probably not my life's calling. And then really went back to the drawing board to figure out how can I commit my talents to really supporting Black entrepreneurship, right, and supporting the growth of businesses in our community. And when I distilled it down, I concluded, right, that where the most impact probably could be found, right, is both in finance, right, on the sort of raising capital side, as well as branding and marketing on the storytelling and reaching new customer side. And so that's really how I came to the work that I'm doing today. We started initially working with barbershops, interestingly enough, in New York City, helping them with the basics, right? Logo and brand identity, photography and videography production, as well as web design and web development.
So, tell us more. I think for the people listening, there are some people that have businesses, and there's some people that are aspiring to start businesses, but then there are other people that are just in their job. What does this word brand really mean? We see it everywhere. I think it's overused, and I think it's that thing that you're expected to know, but we don't actually understand what it is. So, help us understand, what is branding.
Yeah, I like to think about brand really as the story that bridges your customer to your business offering. I guess that's on a high level. That's kind of how I would frame brand. I really sort of think of these two poles, right? You've got story and you've got community. And so when you look all around you, communities are ultimately built and brought together through stories, right? And so your brand essentially is your story. Your brand is your offer, and your brand ultimately is a bridge to build community.
So let's go through maybe a few examples. You talked about the barber shops. What about a barbershop needs a brand? Usually they know who they know and people come and they get their hair cut. Well, why does a barbershop need a brand?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? So barbershops are probably some of my favorite communities in the world. I mean, contrary to what most people would assume, you think barbershop and you think haircuts, right? But the reality is that it's much deeper than that, right? I think the beauty of the barbershop is that it's a really all titles stay at the door environment, right? You know, irrespective of your net worth, your pedigree, your background, everybody is coming there for fundamentally the same thing, is to get their haircut. But beyond grooming, right, it really is it's a social space, right? It's a place for discussions around politics, discussions around society, debates around religion, debates around identity. And so it really is a rich social club. And so to your point on, why does a barbershop need a brand? Well, the truth is, it all depends on kind of what you're looking for, in a haircut, right? I mean, if you're looking for kind of an old boys and old girls club kind of vibe, right? That's going to be very different from folks who want something very high end and exclusive, right? I've worked with this community for years, and so I've seen a very wide range of barbershops. And so depending on how you're looking to position, that really kind of determines how you tell that story and who you ultimately attract.
And talk more about this word positioning. For those that don't understand, like, all of these terms are very specific to branding and marketing, but we take it for granted and think we understand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So positioning really is about uh, definition, right? It's about defining who your product and service is for. and also defining who your product and service is not for, right? And I think that latter piece is where folks get kind of hung up, because when people start their businesses, they really think about global takeover, right? I want to build something that's for everybody. But in reality, right, most of us begin with relatively fewer resources at the very beginning of our journey. And so being able to discriminate, right, in a positive sense, is actually a plus, right, for the effectiveness of getting your message across to your customer.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And on the call, we have some people listening that are in their careers. They've established themselves for many years, and they're considering becoming an entrepreneur. The conversation around brand, what should they be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think again, to use another buzzword that's kind of floating around in the ether right now, I throw out authenticity, right? So I think when you're really looking to get started in business, it's all about identifying the truest and the most authentic story to who you are. Because at the end of the day, all you're really doing from a branding standpoint is you're really leveraging your story, leveraging your experiences, leveraging the aggregate perspective, right, that you've refined over the course of your professional career, and you're distilling that down, right, to a story. You're distilling that down to a one-liner. You're distilling that down to a community, right, that you'll look to cultivate and elevate over time, right? And so, as cliche as it may sound, right, meditation, right, coming into self, right, and really developing personal and professional clarity, I think is essential, right, to the cornerstone of your brand and the cornerstone of really getting off the ground in a strong way.
Thank you for that. And I think that's true for businesses as well. You and I are both in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, and that's how we met. And a lot of the work that they're doing and their brand is around building up businesses out like ours to succeed and accelerate and like amplify the work that we do. Tell me more about Powered by Q. Where did the name come from, and what is the backstory of your brand?
Totally. So Powered by Q is a full service branding agency helping entrepreneurs thrive online and offline. We work with visionary leaders seeking to balance both beautiful creative with bold marketing that they can take to the bank. We build beautiful, bold brands. So a bit about the Powered by Q brand, right? So Q actually means to begin, to start, and to initiate. And at the very beginning of our journey, we were really looking to work with folks who are just kind of in that in between state, right? They're in that ideation. I don't fully know kind of how I want to position this quite yet. I'm still looking to identify my audience. I believe I'm onto something really powerful, but I don't really have the capacity, right, to bring together the strategy, the logo and brand identity, the media production required, the web presence required. And so that's really who we were looking to work with, right? Initiators, creatives, right? That very much were in need, right, of the support, right, to realize their brands, to clarify their brands, to visualize their brands. And early on in our journey, again, we started with barbershops. Interestingly enough, the backstory is before starting the agency, we actually were into digital products and mobile apps. And so we built a mobile app, for the barbershop community. Weren't quite able to raise the capital needed to scale that product. And so ended up pivoting. And in the process of building this community, all these guys were kind of raising their hand up like, yo, Obi, the app is dope. But do you know anybody that can do this logo for me? Hey, like I need some product photography, right, for this product I'm looking to get off the ground. Do you know a photographer that can help me out? Hey, I don't know my way around WordPress, Squarespace, or Weebly, right? But I know I need to establish a website. Where do I begin? So these questions kind of ultimately led us to the model. Interestingly enough, I would say that I'm an accidental agency owner in that sense. And one project led to the next, right? We started doing projects for a number of different barbershops that then became beauty salons. Before we knew it, we were being referred to lawyers and real estate developers and a wide range of other different businesses.
And so, like when you think about your sweet spot right now in today's day, bless
Sorry.
you.
Thank you.
Where do you find like the most exciting projects? Not to say that the other ones aren't, but where are you finding the most joy and excitement, and why?
Wow. So these days, we're finding ourselves kind of go upstream a little bit. We're still very much in this world of, okay, well, how can we impact as many minority-led businesses as possible? And so through a handful of government projects, a handful of corporate brands that are aligned with this mission and vision of empowering, right, the minority entrepreneur, right, the Black entrepreneur, the Latinx entrepreneur. How can we essentially leverage partnerships to reach a bigger and broader audience? And to the point mentioned earlier in the story, right, we're finding ourselves almost circling back now to building platforms, right? So essentially databases, right, that showcase large amounts of businesses, right? That's really kind of where we're finding ourselves moving towards, and that excites me because in line with some of the things we're learning at Goldman, it's about scale to a degree. It's about scale and impact, right? And so, to the extent that we can sort of, impact more businesses more resourcefully, that's probably a direction we want to go in.
Yeah, one of the other things you mentioned was the word marketing, and you said it multiple times. I think we had a good dialogue and conversation around how everything gets thrown into this bucket of marketing, and sometimes it's PR and sometimes it's something else. When you're talking to a small business owner or even a medium-sized business owner, what are some of the things they should be thinking about before they even start working with you?
Yeah. So again, great job, LJ, on defining these terms, right? So these are terms we throw out all the time. So positioning, what is that? Branding, what is that? Marketing, what is that? Selling, what is that? On the marketing front, I would say everything begins with your list. And so I like to kind of simplify it in that way. Marketing very much, at least in sort of our digital era, is really the art and science of list building. And really that comes down to a name and an email address, right? So to the extent that you're actively working to capture a name and an email address in your target audience, that effectively is marketing. There's a debate in terms of like what channels smaller brands should focus on. I'm biased when it comes to email marketing, paid social media, those two, as well as sort of organic social media marketing. Between those three, I would say that's probably where smaller brands want to kind of get started. And I think for the more ambitious as well, you can't beat content marketing, right? So your ability to educate, right, and really think about your brand from an educational perspective is going to be pretty important when it comes to marketing. Hope that's clear.
No, that's pretty clear. I think one of the things we can also talk about is for the small businesses that have been heavily reliant on social media. Sometimes we don't own our list and own our data or information. And we're not shouting out any brands because if they'd like to be a sponsor of an episode, they certainly can, but they are not right now. However, strategies around list ownership, because you've seen a number of people get locked out of like Instagram, Facebook, any of these social media channels, and then they can't get their followers back and they have to restart.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hacking going on. What direction do you tell people to go in as they're thinking about building these lists?
Yeah, no, I love that story that you told because that's becoming way too common these days, and it's very devastating, right, for smaller brands, right? So again, to your point, we put so much energy, resource, and focus into these third party platforms, right, that we ultimately do not own. And so that's part of the reason why I'm leaning in heavy on the email marketing piece, right? Sort of like building your list, because ultimately, at least in theory, right, that is data that you own and that you can control, right? I've yet to hear anybody sort of losing their email list, but and so in general, right, to the extent that you can actually, get data off of as many third party platforms as possible, right, and actually have them somewhere where you can sort of um, protect, right? I think that's definitely going to be an asset, right? That's worth investing in, right? And so, exactly to the point that you made, right? Again, I think the cornerstone of all small business owners' marketing strategy, right, should be to build up their email marketing list, and to get really creative with going direct to their audience, right? Apart from a third party social media intermediary.
And one of the other things that you shared, you said bold marketing. So let's define what bold marketing really looks like. So now that we understand what marketing is and we understand what a brand is and positioning, tell us more about how Powered by Q helps create a bold marketing placement for someone or a company.
Yeah. So, so our process really begins with the story. It really begins with the narrative, right? So we used that P word earlier in the conversation, positioning, and that for us, right, is really about extracting that authentic narrative, right, that exists within you as a founder, that authentic narrative that exists within the community that you're looking to serve. And we actually begin with copy, right? A lot of creative agencies tend to kind of go visual first. Our philosophies, right, is to really, really lock in the words. We find that that's the hardest part for most brands, and that's figuring out, okay, well, what is the exact language that I need, right, to articulate my value prop? And so we find that like the secret, right, to building a bold brand is really strong, thoughtful, directed language that is both authentic to you, right, as the brand architect, as the founder, as well as language that's going to resonate very specifically with the folks that you're looking to speak to. And then from that frame, from that storyline, if you will, right, we then build out the visual expression of the brand, right? So if you look at logo or logos, right, I mean that really is, in the Greek, it's express thought, right? And so if you kind of break that down, right, you got to get the thought clear first, right, through the writing and the articulation of the brand, right? And then all you're doing from a logo and brand identity standpoint is that you're designing around the words, right? So you're creating visual approximations, if you will, around your expressed thought, right? We've got the logo and brand identity, and some of that now informs your colors, and that informs the texture that you layer into the brand, and that informs the way that you structure the brand and the visual hierarchy of the brand. So all of that is our visual brand identity guidelines. And then from there, we transition to photo and video, which, to your point about hearing and seeing it everywhere, again, we live in a sight and sound generation. So you're on TikTok, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, and you're being inundated, right, with tons of visual media, right? So, but how do we work with brands to create visual media that's going to stand out, right? So that for us is bold marketing, right? It's getting the language clear, getting the language tight, and then creating a visual expression, right, that's going to set you apart, and that's ultimately going to attract your audience to your offer.
Yeah, so no, that's amazing. Thank you for that, because I don't think we understand like how much work goes into creating these brands. We see it and we're like, "Oh, okay, that looks great. That commercial at the Super Bowl was amazing." But we're not really thinking about how much effort went into creating the logo, thinking about what is that really saying. I can say sometimes it's people saying, "Oh, I saw a star and I think that a star should be in my logo." And you're like, "Okay, but you do like dentistry. Like, I don't get it, but okay, sure, great." So it's interesting to hear you talk about just the thought process. And for many, that's not their skill. They just need someone to help them tell the story, to extract it out of their brain and
Yep.
get it onto paper. And then say, yeah, that is exactly what I want people to see and to think when they see me. So with these, this is such an intangible process, hard for people to understand like how much effort goes into it. What are the metrics or ways that you define success for yourself? Like, we did this well, it looks great. How do you measure that?
Yeah, that's an amazing question, right? And to your point, given our program, it's, we are kind of stepping into this mindset of measurement, right? So I will say that we are very much in the process of redeveloping and redesigning our own internal metrics, right, to measure our effectiveness and to measure our efficiency. And I think what I love about the brand world is that it is very much art first, right? I think there's a very sort of spiritual and personal element, right, to the work that we're doing here. And so sometimes it can be tricky to measure it. We try to think really from the client experience backwards, right? So ultimately, can we go back to 100 of our clients, right, and actually have them give us a net promoter score here, right? So hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, right, would you recommend Powered by Q to a friend, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience with our agency, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, uh, you know, you know, how much, how clear are you, right, when it comes to your own brand identity, right? And I think that last question is probably one of the most important, because I think I like to think about branding as really the art and science, from really sort of taking a raw concept, right, that tends to be pretty amorphous, pretty ambiguous, and bringing it to some kind of visual clarity, right? So, even you as a founder, as a visionary, like, can you see your brand, right, in a very tangible way, right, on the other side of our process? So these are examples of some sort of basic metrics that we're looking to track and be more thoughtful around. And then also on the internal side, right, kind of making sure that our teams, right, are staying inspired, and our teams are staying fulfilled, right, in the work that they do, right. There's an intangible cost to creating commercial art, right, where so oftentimes the end is not clear from the beginning. There are a lot of different iterations. No one particular process looks the same, right? So we're not building computers or sprockets or widgets, right? So this, we're very much in the dream making business. And so, to the point, right, it can be difficult to figuratively and literally get your hands around the work.
Yeah, I mean, the dream making business, I absolutely am. I love that, because, sometimes we're afraid of our dreams, right? Sometimes we're looking at our dreams, and you're trying to extract out somebody's vision for their future, and their own mind is getting in their own way. And how do you kind of help them amplify that? So it sounds like you're also doing some counseling in these conversations.
No, I would agree with you on that, LJ. It's definitely it is therapeutic. We have heard that. There have been some shedding of tears in some of our sessions, for sure. And exactly as you spoke to, I mean, these are things that are near and dear to people, right? So I think at the end of the day, we all have brands, multiple brands within us. And so to that end, right, I like that we made that connection together, right? Yes, a brand really is, it's a shared dream, right? So it's a shared dream with you as the visionary. It's a shared dream with your customers, your partners. It's a shared dream with your fans. And so the ability to sort of like clarify that dream is ultimately what we're doing. And that's very, very personal, very, very personal, very, very intimate work.
Yeah, talk more about that piece of the personal and intimate, because I think oftentimes, like, no one wakes up and says, well, maybe somebody does, I'm just going to go be an entrepreneur and just take this very challenging journey of just because. So many people shy away from telling their own authentic story and including it as part of their brand, or they just shy away from it, or they just want to pivot away from it. Tell me more about, like, what you think makes a strong brand, like, authenticity wise.
Wow, great question. Yeah, so I would say what makes a strong brand is clarity, right? So I think clarity is kind of the apex, right, of a great brand, right? So again, when you see it, do you get it, right? Do when you hear it, do you recognize it? Brand ultimately to me is about clarity, right? And so again, going back to kind of our process with the words, I believe that shared language is really the foundation of the brand. You're ultimately something of a linguist, if you will, right? You're really looking to build a culture, and one of the primary inputs of building a culture is language, shared language, right? And so you as a founder, you as a brand architect, but that's really what you're doing here, right? You're translating, right, your vision, right, into an understandable, comprehensive language that all of these various stakeholders need to connect with and adopt. So I hope I answered that.
No, it's good. It's good. And I think the other side of this is also making sure people understand what is marketing and what's not marketing.
Yeah.
So in a brief way, just kind of give us an idea what marketing isn't.
Yeah. So I think marketing is not selling, and that's kind of counterintuitive in a way, right? Because I think we market with the goal, or well, some of us, depending on the product, service, or offering, market with the goal of selling. But I think marketing really is about sharing, right? So it's less about taking, it's more about giving, right? And so how can you give value, right? That should be your primary objective, I would say, as a marketer, right? And the foundational value that you can give typically is going to be education, typically is going to be information, particularly in our era now of content marketing, right? So, can I offer something to my audience for free, quotation, that's a really, really high value, right? And that helps them become clearer in their respective journey.
Okay.
That's how I would frame and define marketing. And in terms of what it's not, it's not selling. It's not self promotion. It is yeah, it is not it's not arm twisting, right? It's none of those things.
Okay, so buy my offer, buy my offer, buy my offer, not marketing.
It's absolutely not marketing.
Got it, got it.
But,
And you
some,
mentioned,
some would say that that's spamming some, right? But that's not marketing.
well, we could talk about spamming, but I don't know if there's time for that. But you did mention the word content marketing.
Yeah.
So just for those that are newbies or just listening, what is content marketing and how is it different, or how is it, I guess, an extrapolation or extension of marketing?
Yeah, so content marketing, I like to think of it simply as really the art and science of educating your audience, right? And that education can happen in a wide range of ways. It can happen through a podcast like the one that we're on right now. It can happen through a blog. It can happen through a video series. It can happen through a common one is a PDF typically, right? So typically you'll see 10 ways to, right? Or 7 ways not to, right? So typically some sort of numerical PDF offer, right? You guys have probably seen tons of these swimming around the internet. And typically, right, these are offered in exchange for a name and email address, right? So that going back to that sort of building your listing, right? So content marketing and email marketing tend to go hand in hand, right? How can I offer typically an educational product that's of high value to a very specific audience in exchange for contact, in exchange for a name, in exchange for an email address, right? And so to the extent that you can sort of refine that wheel, right, you now have a list, right, of people who for the most part you can conclude are interested in some of the things that you have to offer, right? And so typically you then follow on with a series of emails, right, or a series of communications, right, to engage that community that you're building. Hope that's a
Okay.
good frame for content marketing.
No, that's a good one. That's a good one. And so, like, in our last minute, we have to kind of think through, powered by Q. What are 3 tips Powered by Q can give to an existing business when it comes to marketing? And who's Powered by Q looking for?
Okay, so I guess the first one, right, is that it's okay to start scared. That's kind of tip number 1, right? This idea that you've got to have it all figured out, right? I think is one of the biggest myths going. So number 1, right, it's okay to start. It's okay to start afraid, right? Number 2 is that your greatest learnings are in doing, right? And so I think we sometimes we can get stuck in analysis paralysis and reading this blog and watching this 100th YouTube video, right? But at some point you got to really step into the act of doing. And what you'll learn in the process of doing is tremendously going to be powerful. And then number 3, right, is that your story, your experiences, your point of view is the value, right? Like that's that value prop, right? So this idea, we get so used to watching everybody else tell their story, right? And we get wowed and enamored and blown away by all that they do. failing to realize or really undervaluing, right, our own individual stories, right? Our experiences, right? Where you went to school, where you grew up, how you grew up, right? The skills that you've developed, right? The point of view that you've established, all of that is super valuable. And so boldly step into your storytelling, boldly step into your journey.
And the last part, because we're a little over time, but I definitely want to be able to say this. Powered by Q, ideal clients. Who are you talking to? Who should reach out to you? How should they reach out? How should they find you?
Totally, right. So we are working with the multicultural entrepreneur that is relatively early stage, right? For the most part, right? You can either be sort of pre or post product or pre or post service, right? In terms of your journey as an entrepreneur. As far as where you can find us, you can find us on most social media platforms. That's at Powered by Q, POWERED BYCUE. And then our website, of course, right? So www.poweredbyq.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Obi, for joining us on this episode of Any Given Monday.
LJ, thanks so much for the invite, and really excited to see you again soon.
Yes.
All right.